Thanks for watching Mr. Shoe Guy here on YouTube. It's Robert, Mr. Shoe Guy. On a pretty crisp fall day, wanted to come to you with a video on a topic that I don't often see. On YouTube, I see a lot of why should I buy this, how much should I sell it for, which brands are really good, and I have a few of those videos myself. But I wanted to do a video that is rarely seen, at least from my perspective, and that is a video that's extremely important. It's on customer service. What makes for good customer service, and what can you do to improve your customer service? Specifically on platforms like eBay and Craigslist, when you're online and you're selling items, customer service is tantamount. And when I say tantamount, it's imperative. It's extremely important because that's what's going to make the sale for you, and that's also what's going to keep you around, especially on sites where feedback is tracked, like eBay, like Etsy, like Amazon. It's extremely important to have prompt customer service and respond to buyers' questions quickly, as well as thoroughly and comprehensive. So if a buyer asks you a three-part question and you only answer one part of their questions are still out there, and at the end of the day that can hurt you. You might get the sale, but the buyer feels that you didn't really address all of their needs, all of their concerns. That can be a problem for you. So when buyers ask a question, it's important to be prompt in getting back to them, and that's why you see most big companies that respond within 24 to 48 hours. What would make for a good customer service standard on your part is to have actual standards and policies in place. You often see big companies with handbooks and procedures in place to formalize when customers should be responded to. And so from that regard, for you and your business, it'd be great if you had a 24-hour policy or a 12-hour policy. Honestly, the quicker you can get back to a customer and promise them that, maybe on your listings on eBay or Craigslist, if you put in there, promise to get back to you within X amount of hours and actually do it, that can be great in terms of customer service, in terms of setting precedent and establishing standards that are visible to your buyers. It's as simple as that sometimes. At the very base of your business, you need to have strong customer service standards in place. And so responsiveness is one of the biggest tenets of that. Now, again, going back to what I was saying earlier, you can be extremely responsive but still not very thorough in getting back to your buyer. And so that's where you need to have good information. You don't necessarily have to write them a book, but you need to be, and actually sometimes conciseness, being short and to the point, can help you. But you do need to actually be thorough enough to get back to all of a buyer's questions. And so in that regard, you need to have somebody, either you handle it or somebody who's actually handling customer service who actually cares enough to make sure that every part of a question that a buyer asks is answered thoroughly, concisely, and responsibly. So that's what we mean when we say strong customer service standards. It's not enough to just respond 3 days later. It's not enough to just respond a week later with all the information, because you haven't hit responsiveness standards, and you may have hit the thoroughness, but you haven't hit it from all the angles. So when you really think about it, a buyer asks you a simple thing, such as, okay, when can I expect this pair of shoes to come? And do they have both pairs? Do they have both shoes in the pair? To you, it may seem obvious. To somebody watching this video, it may be like, that's a ridiculous question. Nobody will ever ask that. However, I've actually had that question asked to me at least 10 times in the times that I've been selling shoes. And so, again, it seems so obvious. It sounds like a, duh, look at the picture. You've got you got shoes right there, 2 shoes right there. What's the big deal? They could just look at it. And sometimes when I see relatively inane questions come through, I do get frustrated. I think anybody would. But if you don't respond to those questions, you can actually prevent yourself from getting a sale simply because you didn't respond. And that can be tough. Now, there is 2 sides to that, and so maybe you don't respond because you don't feel like you have the time to deal with that nonsense, and it might be better worth your time to not respond because there may be another buyer who already can follow the instructions, can follow the listing details that are right there, and maybe you just honestly you don't want to be bothered with those questions, and that's fine. But you got to know the ramifications and consequences of you not doing something. So the reason this video exists is to help you to see, just in case you're not aware, how answering buyer questions and overall handling customer service can impact you, whether that's good or whether that's bad. So another piece of customer service, because it's not just answering questions, is being proactive. And so there's a difference between being proactive and reactive. And when you really look at it, you need to have both elements. It's just like when you're playing football and you're on the football field. You know, you have an offense and you have defense. And you know, both players on both sides, they have a specific position that they're playing for, but a lot of them are playing offensively and defensively at the same time. And that's why sports can be so deep. Well, when you take that sports analogy and look at your business in the same way, you know, you may be a defensive lineman, but you still have some responsibilities for controlling the offense. For instance, when an interception happens and people are on the field, and now you've gone from being defense to being offense just like that. Well, that's the kind of the same way when you're looking at your eBay business or your Craigslist business or whatever. When a question comes through, you're being slightly defensive, but you don't want to respond to the buyer in a purely defensive way. And so one of the things you can do is be a little bit proactive. So if you get a question like, I'm not sure they're going to fit, how do they fit you? You can respond like, well, I've owned these for X amount of time, X amount of days, X amount of months, X amount of years. They fit me fine, being honest if they did fit you, or being honest about, okay, well, I picked these up at a yard sale or an estate sale, or I'm a reseller or whatever. So you proactively can offer information if you so choose, and then you can also tell them a few other things that they may not have known that they might have been wondering. So that's a way you can be proactive. Or if a buyer has an issue, so now we're going to get into, you know, if the buyer really has some issues, you can be proactive with information as well. If they find that, you know, you made a mistake and you sent them the wrong pair of shoes, or, you know, whatever it is you're selling, it may not just be shoes, you might be selling leather bags, cameras, electronics, whatever. You send them something and there's a mistake or an issue with it, or simply they just don't like it. You can be proactive and you can offer solutions. So there's another tenet of customer service. Say everything you've done right, but the buyer has an issue or something's not right. In terms of customer service, problem resolution, issue resolution, how you overall manage problems is a big tenet of customer service as well. And if you've ever worked in sales, you know this. But just for the folks who maybe are starting a reselling business from scratch, or they're really just kind of at that hustle stage of a reselling operation, and they're really trying to turn it from a hustle into more something that looks like a business, understand again that customer service is a big piece of it. And so how you handle these seemingly small issues is going to impact your hustle and your business over time. And so making sure that you're adhering to strong customer service standards in the problem resolution, dispute resolution process is tantamount. Again, so if you've got a buyer and they don't like a pair of shoes, they don't like an electronic that you sold them, they said it didn't work even though you tested it and it seemed to have worked, or you even got pictures to show that it did work, that is important that you, number one, acknowledge that they have an issue. I cannot tell you how many times it has saved me when I simply wrote to the buyer and said, I understand that you're upset. I can completely see where you're coming from. If, as a matter of fact, if I were in your shoes, I might be upset too. You don't necessarily have to admit fault. That's a big piece. I will repeat that again. You don't necessarily have to admit fault, that you did something wrong, but to acknowledge that they're upset, to acknowledge that there may be an issue that you maybe don't have the full details on, but you understand that, hey, you're a little upset, there may be something wrong, there may be a miscommunication. That would be the second thing. So you can admit that there may be a miscommunication between the two of you and that maybe something got lost in translation, You can point them back to the listing, although if you point them back to the listing too concisely, like, see, this is where you went wrong, you read this wrong, I was right, that can piss them off. And so be aware of that. That's not to say that you shouldn't always, that you should never do that, but that's to keep in mind that you could piss a buyer off by doing that. And so again, knowing the ramifications and consequences of what you're doing is important. So just keep that in mind, that you could irritate a buyer like that. But again, there are situations where that might be what's necessary. So from a dispute resolution standpoint, there's an issue, offering proactive solutions, coming up with outside of the box ideas. A couple things you can do in that regard. Maybe there is a buyer that they got an item and they didn't like the item, and your first thought is to just refund them entirely. Well, that's an option that you have. You can certainly do that. But have you ever considered refunding them 50%? That's something that I have offered buyers proactively, as opposed to offering them 100% refund. Sometimes I've even presented to them as, maybe we can offer you a 50% or 100% refund. And a lot of times they'll take the 50% refund. And I've been extremely transparent and said, hey, I might have made a mistake. Here's what I'll offer. You could do this, you could do that. And they've actually taken the one that was a little bit less hurtful to my business, a little less harmful to my business. That's an idea. Sometimes you can say, maybe I'll just send you another item, or I'll exchange it for another item that's of like kind. There's so many ideas that you can actually put out there on the table, but if you're not thinking with your customer service hat on, you may not consider that. So I wanted to make this video to give you ideas, because I see so many videos out there of what to buy, why to buy it, and what to sell it for, but there's few videos on how to make your buyers happy, how to keep them happy, how to keep your reselling business afloat, how to not get kicked off eBay, how to not get your Craigslist account deleted, how to not piss people off. I don't see that as many times. And so I wanted to make this video to offer you a few tips. I got one more tip for you. Sometimes the buyer is not right. And so I know that a big saying in sales and in customer service is the buyer's always right. The customer is always right. That maybe was true at one point in time, but with the internet, I think the internet has shed some real light on things. And what I'd like to do is actually tell you just a quick story, because I think it highlights the customer not always being right. And I don't mean that from I like to irritate my customers or really make it so that I'm in any type of way taking advantage of them, because I don't do that. But I did have one buyer that I actually had a listing for. It was a pair of shoes, I think it was like $70, $80, and they sold for my price. If you don't know, if you haven't watched my videos on shipping, I do charge shipping to the buyer, and I make that crystal clear in my listings, and I also make that crystal clear in the price. So my price is one thing, and then the shipping is additional. And the buyers almost always pay for it. I've had a few buyers that say, you know what, I'd rather not have shipping on this item, let me buy the item, and shipping is going to be free, because I say it's going to be free, because they tell me that. So in that case, they'll offer me a revised price. I'll sell it, and they won't pay shipping. And then I'll pay shipping, but I'm still getting my price at the end of the day. Well, this guy, he actually bought my item, and shipping was included, but after the fact, after the transaction had been complete, I had gotten the item to UPS, USPS, sent it off to him, he got it. He then gets the item in his hand, looks at it, says it's okay, and then somehow finds my phone number through eBay, calls me. Yeah, he called me. This guy called me and left me an angry voicemail talking about, I didn't know that you were going to charge me shipping. Well, it said it on my listing, but whatever. I tried to get back to him, he didn't pick up the phone. He then calls me back an hour later with another angry voicemail talking about how, same thing. So at this point, I promptly called him and I said, I don't know what you're talking about, man, but literally, this was on my listing, and I apologize if you're upset, but it was on my listing, you paid it, the transaction's complete, and I really don't know what more to do for you. So if there's anything I can do, please let me know. And at that point, he actually, on the phone, admitted to me, I'm sorry, I just thought I could get it over on you, my fault. He actually admitted to me that he was trying to pull one over on me. And that is what I mean when I say the internet sometimes the internet doesn't lie. I mean, because in 15, 20 years ago, before the internet existed, you know, this kind of stuff happened. You always had people out there who would try and pull one over on you. But when you have documentation on the internet, you have emails exchanged, you have receipts that are saved online, you've got all kinds of documentation between eBay, all these Etsy, Amazon. It's really tough to pull something over, because at the end of the day, if you are cheating somebody or you're doing something that's dishonest, you can easily be found out. And I'm not the kind of person you can do that to. And what I'd recommend is you not be the kind of person that somebody else can do that to. And so if you believe that somebody is doing something that can harm your business, at the end of the day, here's what could have happened with that situation. I sold an item, and this person was supposed to pay shipping. They did pay the shipping, and it went to my account. Then at the end of the day, they would have gotten the item. They could have said, I didn't get the item, it wasn't as described, I don't know what's wrong with this transaction, but something went wrong and I want my money back. And eBay would have literally refunded them and asked questions later, because that's how eBay and other sites are. They can do that because when you sign those terms of service and sign up for them, you agree to a lot of things. And if you're not certain of what you're agreeing to, it's best to read those terms and conditions. But just in case, they can do that. And so in the end of the day, my business could have been impacted. However, because of the way I handled the situation, and this is just a, you know, kind of a testament to some of the things I share with you in this video. Because of what I did, nothing bad happened to my account. Nothing bad happened in the transaction. Number one, I acknowledged that he was upset. I called him back, even though normally I don't call customers. The man called me twice and left me a voicemail 2 different times. I called him back the minute that I saw he left me a voicemail. Called him back, talked with him, acknowledged that he was upset, and asked him what I could do. I didn't admit guilt because there was no guilt to admit. I asked him what I could do, and then we talked it through. He admitted his guilt, and at the end of the day, said that he was sorry. He made a mistake, and it's no big deal. And basically, he was going to just let it go. And I was like, cool, you do that. And so that's what I'm really saying. So when you start thinking about how can you handle your business better? How can you turn this reselling hustle into more of a business that is